Welcome to Scrapbooking Made Simple. Today we are going to do an embossed vellum layout and create our base using alcohol inks. So I do apologise for the camera image, how it's jumping. I'm not quite sure what happened on the day when I recorded this, but hopefully it won't distract you too much. To get started, you will need your alcohol ink cardstock and add some of your alcohol ink. We're going to use two colours. I've used a blue and a pink today, but any two coordinating colours will work. So before we add any of the colour on to our cardstock, we're just going to cover half of the cardstock with isopropyl alcohol, and then picking up with a paintbrush the colour from the craft mat, adding it on to the alcohol page. So it doesn't need to be perfect in any kind of way that you're putting it on. You're looking for just a good coverage of the colour, but you don't want it too dark. So we're looking for a more pastel colour, which is why we've gone with the isopropyl alcohol as opposed to using a blending solution, because as much as we want the colours that we're using to blend slightly in the middle, we do want to have that separation of colour. So just keep adding the colour on to about half of the cardstock with your paintbrush. Just keep adding until you're happy with the pattern that it has created in the background. It's a lot of fun doing it this way, something a bit different. It's the first time I've tried using it this way. Not always the most confident with a paintbrush, but adding it on, you can see like it's creating different patterns as you're adding more and more ink into different areas. So when you are happy with the colour that you have put on and used up all the colour that you have on your craft mat, you're just going to clean off the brush and clean off the mat. And you can do that quite easily with the isopropyl alcohol. Oh, that picture is really jumpy. I do apologise. So it's up to you how long you spend on adding this colour in. I was just having all sorts of fun creating the different patterns in the background as I kept adding more and more colour, just until it had all dried up on my mat. So we will move on to our second colour and apply it in the same way, but doing it on the bottom. Okay, so adding the ink to the mat, your craft mat, the glass mat, are fantastic to use with alcohol inks. They make things so much easier and great and easy to clean up. So we'll move on to our next colour. So just adding the colour to the craft mat, just as we did with the blue at the start. So, and then adding your isopropyl alcohol on to your cardstock. I've probably put, I don't know, about 8 or 10 drops if you were to do drops on the mat. I didn't really pay attention to squeezed amount of colour because you can always pull more colour on if you need it. So just adding the colour on and then adding it into the blue to get that blend in the colours. So you'll get a slight purple blend happening, but it's not going to be too strong because we've used the isopropyl over the blending solution, because we do still want that separation of colours, but we want just that blended line in the middle to head in the more purple direction. So just keep adding the colour on your background until you are happy with uh, what's been created. As you add or continue adding the pink on to your page, if you find that like you are hoping for a bit more purple or wanting a bit more purple through that middle, with the ink that was washed out of the brush on the craft mat, just add a bit more isopropyl alcohol into it. You can pick that up and then add some more purple blend through the pink as well. It's a great way of covering a large amount of the background without using very much ink at all. But it's a really effective way of creating a background. So once all the ink has dried up and your page is completely full of colour, we are going to clean off the glass mat, and then we are going to flick some isopropyl alcohol onto the cardstock to create a speckled effect in the background. So picking up, I used a fan brush for this, so you can use just your paintbrush that you using before, but since I had a fan brush, it just gives me a finer effect, having the bristles spread out, but whatever you have available to you at home is fine as well. So just picking up isopropyl alcohol and tapping and flicking the isopropyl onto your background with your brush. And you can do this as much or as little as you like. I know it doesn't look like anything's happening right now, but the effect will show up in a little bit. So just keep going until you are happy with the desired effect. I really wanted to amp up the speckled effect in the background, so I did quite a lot of splattering. The design or effect that I was going for, but just have a bit of fun with it and see what comes about with flicking the isopropyl onto your background. I really did a lot. I just kept going, kept wanting to add more splatter onto my background. It's good fun. It makes for a really effective background, and you can now start to see just on that top right hand side, you can start seeing the effect as the ink is lifting. So more, when will she stop? Don't feel you have to do as much as I did. I think I really wanted that speckled effect. It does look amazing once it is all finished though. So when you have finished and you're happy with the amount of isopropyl alcohol that you have flicked onto your page, just grabbing a bit of paper towel to pick up the ink that has come to the surface. You can really start to see that speckle effect. But getting a bit of paper towel and blotting that off really helps to pull that effect out and make it stand out. even more. So before we move on, we're going to need to dry our page off. So just using the cool setting on a hairdryer. Now I've used the adhesive alcohol ink, because it makes it super easy when adding to the scrapbook layout. But if you just have the normal alcohol ink paper, you can just use adhesive to adhere it onto your page. So once your page is all dry, we are going to cut our page to get ready for the layout. We're going to cut the alcohol ink paper at 5 inches on the short side of the A4 paper. And then with the vellum, I'm going to get a piece of A4 vellum out, and we're going to cut that on the short side again, and cutting that at 4 inches. And once you have the vellum cut, we are going to emboss it using an embossing folder. So any embossing folder that you have in your stash will do. You're just going to place the top half in the embossing folder and then adding a scrap bit of printer paper in between in the sandwich as well before you run it through, and then rotating it around to emboss the other side. And don't worry about there being a gap in the middle, because we are going to add embellishments in that section. Okay, so once you have done your embossing, we can start putting our layout together. When you have chosen the colour that you want to use in your background, I've just used a white piece of cardstock. Going to adhere the alcohol ink page on the left hand side, and then adhering the vellum piece over the top. Now, because I did use the adhesive alcohol ink paper, it makes it very easy to stick down. But then with the vellum, using a vellum tape to. Vellum tape is a fantastic product to have in your stash, and it's something that I would recommend having even if you use vellum just occasionally, because it is great to have there ready to use. You can use it just like a normal tape runner on the vellum, and once you stick it down, you're not going to be able to see that tape at all. It's a fantastic product. So adhering that to the middle of your alcohol ink cardstock, and then adhering the alcohol ink cardstock to the layout. So just lining that up there on the left hand side. And this design leads really easily and happily into a 2-page spread if you wanted to continue this layout. And then we can add some embellishments on using some feathers from the You Go Girl collection. And then to create the photo mats, I ended up just using the scrap strip that was left over from cutting the alcohol ink. But if you wanted to have a like full photo mat with the alcohol ink colors behind it, you would need at the start to have created 2 pages. So you would be able to cut out the 6¼ by 4¼ photo mats and just adding 2 of them, or whatever size you wanted to add on to your layout. So I go ahead and add some placeholder photo mats with white cardstock on, just cutting them at 6×4, but then ended up finishing the layout using some photos that I took when I was in Japan. So have fun working out where all of your embellishments will end up and how they end up looking, and finishing off your page. I hope you have enjoyed creating your embossed vellum layout with alcohol inks today, and we look forward to seeing how your projects turned out. See you next time.